Welcome to SolPods Studio. We're not your average social network. We're a community of professionals, enthusiasts, and students taking sustainability to the next level. Join us on our journey and get inspired by Earth heroes just like you.
Welcome back to another episode of SolPods Studio. I'm Amy Sabik, and today we're here talking with Anne-Marie Bonneau, author of the book Zero Waste Chef: Plant-Forward Recipes and Tips for a Sustainable Kitchen and Planet. Aside from her lovely book, Anne-Marie has a very informative website with tasks everyone can do to be more sustainable. You can find tips on how to go plastic-free, 14 days to zero waste, and you can even sign up for a workshop on how to make sourdough starter, which is a highlight in many of her recipes, where she even shares how to use your sourdough discard. Nothing goes to waste. These tips are available on her website or by following her on Instagram at Zero Waste Chef. Welcome, Anne-Marie, to SolPods, and thank you for sharing your zero waste journey with us today.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, let's get started first with your adventure into going plastic-free, which, as I understand, you started back in 2011. What inspired you to become a zero waste home advocate, and how did you get started on your zero waste journey?
Well, it started, as you said, back in 2011. I was reading about plastic pollution swirling around in the oceans, and this group of environmentalists had built a catamaran out of plastic bottles and waste materials. They sailed that from San Francisco to Sydney, Australia, to raise awareness of plastic pollution. So, raised my awareness. I knew the plastic wasn't great, but I thought, well, I'm putting it in the recycling bin and it gets turned into new things. And as I read, I discovered, that's not actually happening. And, we have a really low recycling rate in the US and worldwide. So that's what got me started. And then I went down this rabbit hole. So I think by paying attention to the plastic waste, it made me more aware of all of the waste. And a couple of years after reading about plastic waste in the oceans, I then read about food waste. And, we waste a huge amount of food. And worldwide, it's about a third of the food we produce. In the US, it's even higher. It's closer to 40%. And it keeps evolving. Things come up like COVID, new challenges. And so that's how it started.
I can imagine just seeing that boat and realizing that that was made out of plastic. It's really true when you look at what we put into our recycling bin that we don't always know exactly what is getting recycled and what isn't. So it really does kind of raise your awareness, seeing that there is a huge amount out there that's probably not really ending up in the recycling system, which is unfortunate.
Right. Our waste management system can't handle all the plastic we produce. So it's not possible, and it shouldn't be on the onus of the consumers and the municipalities. So it has to stop at manufacturing.
Absolutely. And it really is about kind of a mind shift away from consumption of those plastics and buying things in packaging. But tell me, what were some of the hardest or most surprising things about going plastic free, and how have you adjusted to them?
Well, so we're big foodies, and it was hard. It was not easy, and it took many months to adjust. But we found that most of the waste was coming from the kitchen, so that's where we started. And I also wanted to cut plastic out of, personal care. I wanted to cut it out of everything. Personal care for me was the most difficult. Shampoo, deodorant, those were really difficult. And I remember trying to find solutions for those at the same time, and it was not pretty. Back then, there weren't a lot of shampoo bars. Now you can find them all over the place. And those are really easy. They cut out all of those plastic bottles. When you buy shampoo, you're paying for water. A shampoo bar is concentrated shampoo. And so that's what I use today. And then deodorant was also hard, but my daughter, Mary Catherine, she made me some homemade deodorant. It worked so well, and I've been using that ever since.
Yeah, I've actually moved over to the bars as well. I've got curly hair, and my hair is always getting knotted. And so finding a really great conditioner is super important. But now that I use the bar, I love it. I just lather it up a little bit. I get it onto my hair, and the conditioner itself works really great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it can take a while before you find a shampoo bar that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about how you define zero waste and what are some of the key principles of this particular lifestyle?
I think everyone will have a different definition, but mine would be sending nothing to landfill or recycling or even composting except for non-edible food. Composting is great and it's crucial. It's very important, but it does not prevent wasted food. So ideally, we'd eat all of our food and compost it as a last resort. So, and I would also say zero waste is a conserver lifestyle as opposed to a consumer lifestyle. Although you will see all kinds of beautiful, shiny, zero waste things for sale online, but you don't need to go out and buy all of that stuff.
I noticed in your book, you have lots of tips for how to make a lot of things that you actually would go out and buy. Do you want to talk maybe a little bit about some of your favorites that are in your cookbook?
Oh, sure. Yeah, when we started, we had to figure out how to replace these packaged foods. And when my older daughter was a baby, I started making yogurt. And I didn't realize that I was fermenting milk, but that's what I was doing. And I had stopped doing that, so I just started doing that again. And what else do I make? Well, I make natural sodas, which are delicious. They're so good. I've never drank a ton of soda to begin with, but it is nice to have some once in a while, so that's a nice treat. Anything fermented. I love all the fermented things. So hot peppers and hot pepper sauce. Vinegar. I make my own vinegar. Red wine vinegar, actually any type of wine vinegar, is absolutely delicious, even if you use just cheap wine that doesn't taste that good to drink. It makes really good vinegar. When people come over, I always make them taste a little spoonful of my wine vinegar. So, yeah, that's a big favorite.
I recall when I was living over in Paris, I had lived with a family and they had this large pot sitting on their countertop. And I asked what was in the pot. And they said, that's our mother of vinegar. And I said, your what? Your mother of vinegar. I couldn't believe it. And that's what would happen. They would pour their leftover wine into that pot and it would sit in there with the mother of vinegar. And we would have delicious vinegar for our salad dressings, for cooking, for all sorts of things.
Great. That's amazing. So they did a continuous brew then.
Yes.
They would just pour it in and, I've got to do that.
Yes. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And it tastes amazing.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. What are some of your favorite low waste swaps for anyone who might be beginning their zero waste journey?
One of the simplest things you can do is to use cloth produce bags. So reusable produce bags. Just stash them in your shopping bag. You'll always have them when you go shopping, and they really do cut a ton of plastic. And I think they make the food look more appetizing. And I've been doing that since 2011. My daughter and I sold some really simple cloth produce bags. They're really cute, but you can just buy them. You can buy them all over the place. And that has eliminated thousands of produce bags, plastic produce bags from the waste stream. So I would do that. We're all used to shopping with our reusable shopping bags. So this is just one little extra step. Just stuff them in your shopping bag. And when they get dirty, you can wash them and they last for a really long time.
I think those are a great tool to have. And like you said, just stuff them in your regular bags that you take to the grocery store anyway, so that you always have them on hand.
Yeah. Another tip that I love to do, every time we eat out at a restaurant, I pack a bag of containers, empty containers. So I'll bring maybe a couple of metal containers. And at the end of the meal, when we have all these leftovers on the table, I just put them in the containers and bring them home. And that way, I don't have to use one of the throwaway containers that the restaurant supplies. Most of those are plastic. Styrofoam has been banned. I'm pretty sure. Haven't seen a styrofoam container around here for a really long time. Let's see. Paper are often lined with plastic. If they aren't, then they may contain PFAS, which renders paper grease and waterproof, but it's also it's a toxin. It's in everything. Forever. It's also known as forever chemicals.
And definitely not recyclable, and certainly not anything we want to have in our household.
Well, no. And the thing is, even the compostable paper containers that seem much more environmentally friendly, a lot of those contain PFAS. And so when you do put that in the compost, then it contaminates it.
Right.
So if you bring your own, then you don't have to worry about that. The restaurant saves money. It's really convenient. Your lunch is packed and ready to go the next day. And then when you're done, you just wash the container and you don't have anything to throw out. So that's a really simple one.
Zero waste, as you say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that one is. Yeah. Yeah. And then you don't have to choose between whatever kind of container they're handing you and the food.
Right.
You can conserve both types of resources.
And those are simple tasks. They don't seem that hard for people to do. So I love that.
Oh, you just have to get used to it. It's kind of like you wouldn't leave your house without your keys. So don't leave your house without your produce bags stuffed into your shopping bag.
A great tip. So what about some specific items that are a little bit more challenging? Like how do you manage the purchase of milk or cheeses, butter, oils without also having to contend with the containers that those are in?
There are a few companies that sell milk in returnable, refillable bottles, glass bottles. So there's Strauss. So that's what we did for milk. Oils can be a little bit tricky. I have a tiny bit of olive oil left in a jar from the bulk store. So I'll go back there and fill that up. Butter, Strauss butter comes in compostable paper wrappers. At least the last time I bought it, that's what the wrapper had printed on it, on the salted butter. And it's home compostable. Cheese is hard. Depending on where you go, you may be able to bring your own container and have the store fill it up for you with cheese. It's not a problem. At least it hasn't been for us so far. So you just hand over your container and tell them what cheese you want. Other stores won't do that. Sometimes at other stores, it also depends on who's working that day, because some employees in some stores, some restaurants think that there's a law that says that they can't do that, but that's not the case here in California.
Well, certainly for people in other places, I know, again, I'll use France as an example. You could bring your container to the cheese shop. And there are some places in some of the metropolitan areas where you have a cheese shop and you can certainly do that. So it's definitely one way to reduce, purchasing items that have a lot of packaging around them.
Oh, yeah. Well, and cheese and butter, actually oils, you don't want wrapped in plastic because the fat can cause nasty chemicals to leach faster.
Yeah, we have learned a lot more about the dangers of plastic leaching into our food and leaching everywhere. So the more we can reduce any plastic that is touching our food, the better,
right,
clearly.
Right. Yeah. And, so I'm not sure exactly what what happens when, I just know it's not good. But, if you bring your own container, you just don't have to worry about it.
Well, how do you balance the demands of running a household and living a zero or even a low waste lifestyle? I'm sure for a lot of people out there, they're thinking, oh, this is so much work. I really don't have time. I 2 income earners in the house, kids in school. How do I really do this zero waste journey without it wreaking havoc with another 10 tasks I have on my list to do?
I did find it difficult at first, for sure. Now I kind of have it down. Also, I don't cook anything elaborate. Everything I cook is really simple. I follow Julia Child's maxim for cooking, which is, I'm not wording it as eloquently as she put it, but good food for fresh ingredients and not masterpieces. I make very simple food and it's delicious. Also, I don't cook a new dish every night because who has time for that? I'm think of myself as my own sous chef. So when I cook something, I try to think ahead of, okay, what can I make tomorrow night with the little bit of extra ingredients I've cooked tonight from this meal? Because we really have forgotten how to cook, kind of. We don't teach it. We don't think it's important. And so we've kind of forgotten how to do it. And it's not a one-off thing, right? It's a continuous process. And so I think that thinking that way saves a lot of time. When I do make something like I made a big pot of dal the other night, I make a lot of it. And if we don't eat it all, then I will freeze it while it's still good, so it doesn't have a chance to go to waste. And then I have some emergency meals in the freezer. I think planning ahead also is really important. That's key. And it doesn't require a ton of planning. So my wine vinegar that I mentioned, it takes me maybe 5 minutes to start. It takes a month to ferment, but during that time, I don't do a thing. So it's really easy to make, but I do have to wait. So if I need vinegar for my recipe, I have to have thought ahead and I've already started it.
That makes a lot of sense. I know for myself, I definitely have to do a little bit of extra cooking on the weekend, but it makes my weekdays so much easier because I've prepped a lot of the materials, or I've even pre-cooked some of the items, and then it's just a matter of warming them up, which is always really easy and gets dinner on the table a lot faster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I don't do some prep on the weekend, I really regret it during the week.
What about your reaction from your daughters in this lifestyle and others in your life or your family? How have they been supportive and interested in this way of life?
Well, Mary Catherine was 16 when we started this. Now, the way I remember it, I told her we have to get off of plastic because I remember reading about that catamaran. The way she tells it, she told me we had to get off of plastic. So I'm not sure exactly now which way it happened. So she's really into it. Charlotte was only 10, and so kind of unaware of what was happening. When she was a teenager, maybe 13, I remember her asking, why can't we just live like normal people? But she never really complained much. Mary Catherine went on to get her undergrad in environmental governance, and then when she finished that, she got a postgraduate certificate in waste management. And so she works in waste management now here in California. And the biggest part of her job is to work with businesses to comply with SB 1383, which is the law that requires residents and businesses in California to separate food waste and food scraps from non-organic waste. So, and my husband's also very supportive, although sometimes he does ask if Mary Catherine and I can talk about something besides garbage.
Oh, well, clearly you had some very positive influence on your daughter's choice in her career path, which is fantastic. So I think a lot of businesses are going to need a lot of help.
Oh, yeah.
Complying with SB 1383. So
yeah, it's great. She's been able to help quite a few businesses set up, and that's going to divert much more wasted food from landfill than one person doing it on their own, which is important also. It's important for us individuals to do what we can. But when you get a business diverting all of their food scraps, food waste from landfill, that's huge.
It makes a big impact for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I loved finding on your website was you share 23 ways to reduce food waste in your household. Can you share 3 of those with us today?
The number one thing, I think, is to cook a meal from what you have on hand. If you do that, you'll absolutely slash food waste. I should call it wasted food because food waste actually isn't a thing, right? It implies that it's normal, and it's not. There's no such thing. So yeah, number one thing, cook a meal from the food that you have on hand. I think most of us, when we decide what we're going to eat, we let our cravings decide. And so we go out and buy all these new ingredients. If you use what you have, you're going to slash your food waste. So that would be my number one top thing. Another one is use the freezer. My daughter made this rhubarb strawberry galette, and she did an egg wash on the edges of the crust and then sprinkled on some of that fancy sugar, and had this egg left over that she'd mixed up because you just use a small amount for the egg wash. And so I just grabbed a small jar and put it in there and put it in the freezer. Otherwise, you might put that in the refrigerator with the best intentions, but it's easy to forget. So now I have that in the freezer. She might make another galette, I hope, this week or on the weekend, and I can pull that out and thaw it, and she can use that for the egg wash. Or if she uses another egg, then I'll have 2 eggs, and then maybe I'll pull those out and have them for breakfast. Have some scrambled eggs. So freezer is really important. Another really simple way to reduce wasted food is to store food in glass. If you want to cut waste in the kitchen, if you want to try the low waste thing, you're going to want to hoard glass jars because you'll use them for all kinds of things. And one thing you can use them for is storing food. If you can see the food in your refrigerator, then you're more likely to eat it and it's less likely to go to waste. If you have opaque containers sitting in the back of the fridge, then by the time you realize you have those and you open them up, then, they might be pretty sad looking and beyond edible. So that's a simple thing to do. Just store food in glass jars.
I know food always ends up at the back of our refrigerator. So if they were in clear glass containers, a lot more would get eaten. And if we put so much in the refrigerator too, if we had things a little bit more organized in there, we didn't put so much in there, we probably would also eat more of what we have on hand.
Yeah, I also think when you're in the market for a new refrigerator, and this may not be for everybody, but I think a smaller fridge is better. I think our gigantic fridges lead to more food waste because you want to fill it up. And you can't eat all of that, depending on how big your household is.
What advice would you give to somebody who wishes to start to make just some simple changes in their kitchen to contribute to helping the environment?
I would pay attention to what you're throwing out and why. That's what we did when we first started with the plastic. My older daughter, Mary Catherine, did an audit, and every week she would take a picture of the plastic that we had accumulated, and then we could figure out, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? So let's say you find you keep throwing out, oranges because they go bad. Well, buy fewer oranges or figure out something else you can do with them, like maybe squeeze them and, freeze the juice or make marmalade or something. The easiest thing would be to buy fewer oranges. So that would be one thing. Do some sort of audit. The other thing would be eat more vegetables. I gave a talk last week, and when I got to my slide with all the vegetables, I said, I could basically end my talk now. This is the short version. Just eat more vegetables. Most of us don't eat enough vegetables, and we eat foods higher on the food chain that require way more resources and that aren't as good for us if we eat too many of them. So, yeah, eat more fruit and vegetables. They come in their own packaging. They're delicious and they're good for you. I would tell people, don't worry about being perfect. The zero waste is just a goal, and you never actually get there. And even if I don't bring any plastic into my home, there is still plastic out in the supply chain that I don't see. So it's a little bit of a NIMBY thing, but I am helping to reduce overall all the plastic. So just let go of that whole idea of perfection because it's not possible. And it's more important that we have everybody trying than, aiming for perfection, which leads to burnout and can be really discouraging.
Right. And as we talked about, people think it's stressful and I don't have time to do this. But I know we talked about this too, but looking for products that really use less packaging or compostable packaging. As consumers, we're making choices every day with what we buy, and we're supporting companies that are, we want to support companies that are being more environmentally conscious. And by making those choices and choosing things that have less packaging, we're telling these companies and these manufacturers at the top, we're either going to choose you if you have these better packaging, or we're not going to choose you if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to the shampoo bars, when we first started this, I could not find a good shampoo bar. But now they're pretty mainstream, and I think companies have caught on, oh, we need to start making this stuff because people really want it. And you can find them all over. Same with you can buy little pods for the dishwasher and little soap pods that you drop into a bottle and add water to make your own dish. I mean, you're not making your own dish soap, but that's what you can use instead of the bottles of dish soap. I mean, there are so many products like that now that didn't exist when we first started, or at least were really hard to find if they did exist.
Well, we appreciate you paving the way and getting started, because it really took people like you to make these choices and start this journey earlier to start to probably result in what is now happening, this explosion of other products out there that are taking into consideration packaging, reducing it, etc. So I think that's great.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, me and lots of other people.
Well, I've got one last question, which we like to ask this of all of our Earth heroes out there. If you had a sustainability superpower, what would that be?
I think my superpower would be to ease people's guilt. People feel so guilty for the way we live, but our society is set up in a way that we didn't design, and we have to function within this society. So I think don't feel guilty for the state of the world, and just maybe that would be my superpower. Maybe some sort of green therapist for everybody.
I love it. A green therapist.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And remove the guilt associated with how we're consuming, but just know that we can make changes to consume differently.
Right. And that those differences, they add up, and that one person can make a difference.
I agree. And one person, multiplied by many people, we start to see big changes, which is really exciting.
Right.
Well, Anne-Marie, your book is an absolute delight, and it's a well worth read and a staple in any kitchen. It's available in U.S., Canada. It's also available in Taiwan.
Yep.
It's The Zero Waste Chef by Anne-Marie Bonneau. You can stop by her website at zerowastechef.com. Again, you can find loads and loads of recipes, gardening tips, upcoming workshops, and so much more for your zero waste living journey. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for joining us here at SolPods and sharing your practical knowledge and wisdom around maintaining a sustainable kitchen and household.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
SolPods Studio is made possible by listeners like you. Join the free SolPods platform to become a part of our virtual community of changemakers. Links to our social media, website, and platform can be found below in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to rate and review our podcast. Thank you for listening and for your support.